My name is Cheryl Robertson. I'm the dietitian at the Center for Obesity at North Florida Regional. And what we want to talk about today is a healthy weight. I saw some stats that just came out this week that said that 75% of men and 67% of women are now classified as overweight or obese. This is for ages 25 and older. The interesting thing about this number is that in the obese category, we've got 67.6 million. And in the overweight category, we've got 65.2 million. And this is the first time that the number of obese individuals have surpassed the number of overweight individuals. So we have a major weight crisis on our hands, and that's what we want to talk about today. Your BMI, your body mass index, is really the standard now for what's determining overweight or obese. If you just do a BMI calculator Google search, you'll see a website that you just enter your height and your weight, and it will tell you your BMI number. If you calculate it out, it's basically your weight your weight over height squared. The normal category is 18.5 to 24.9. The overweight category is 25 to 29.9, and then anything over 30 is considered to be obese. This works for most people. However, if someone is extremely muscular, such as a professional athlete, then those numbers aren't necessarily good. Another way to kind of gauge this is based on your waist circumference and also your waist to hip ratio, and then also body fat percentage. So all of these are ways to determine whether or not your body weight is where it needs to be. Obviously, when we start talking about waist and waist to hip circumference or ratios, we're concerned about how much weight we're actually carrying in the middle part of the body. You hear about the apples and the pears. As far as your risk for chronic disease risk, then we are more concerned about the apples, the ones that are carrying a lot of weight in that abdominal region. Okay, so what are the risk factors? You're at higher risk for heart disease, cancer, hypertension, diabetes, joint problems, self-esteem problems, depression. All of these can come into play. And you may be thinking, well, okay, I'm not overweight, so therefore, I'm not at risk for any of these. What we're going to talk about in a few minutes is your healthy habits, because over time, as you gain just a pound or two a year in 20 or 30 years, that may be a significant problem, and you may be at risk for this at this particular point in time. Obviously, the reasons for obesity are varied. We generally have a very sedentary lifestyle. The Western American diet is not the greatest. There are medications that can cause weight gain. There's psychosocial factors, thyroid problems, Cushing disease, just a lot of reasons for the excess weight. Okay, so then what are your options? If you decide that your BMI is too high, what are your options? Well, obviously diet and exercise. All right, who has ever dieted? Do diets work? Why do diets not work? I'm sorry? That's right. It's only a temporary change of behavior. You're going to go back to eating the way you did that got you overweight in the first place as soon as you hit that number. Or maybe you're doing something that for 30 days you're going to give up sugar. But when the 30 days are over, you go back to sugar. And so unless it's a real change in lifestyle and habits, then usually the diet's going to be temporary and the weight loss is going to be temporary, okay? Obviously, diet and exercise are important, but if we don't really incorporate it into our lifestyle, we're not going to be successful. There's also various medications that can either block your fat absorption, decrease your appetite, make you feel full. But again, the problem is a lot of times once you go off the medications, then the weight's going to come back on. And then surgery, that's what I deal with on a daily basis. The surgery is a more extreme way to deal with the weight, and yet at the same time it can be very effective. For you to qualify for surgery, for most insurances, your BMI has got to be 40 or it needs to be over 35 with some comorbidities. Those comorbidities are things like diabetes, hypertension, sleep apnea, reflux, things of that nature. And the weight loss surgery can be a tool to really help you get to where you want to be. The least invasive procedure is the lap band, where a band is placed around your stomach, decreasing the amount of volume of food that you can eat. The sleeve is probably one of the most popular procedures now because it decreases your stomach size by removing part of your stomach, leaving a small sleeve, again restricting the volume of food that you can eat. And then the gastric bypass is kind of the gold standard as far as not only are you restricting the amount of food that you can eat, but you're also decreasing the amount of calories you can absorb, and therefore you'll get weight loss. So if you are interested in weight loss surgery, or if you have a family member that's interested in weight loss surgery, I do have some brochures up here that might be something worth pursuing after this program is over. Okay, so we want to talk about 10 habits to achieve a healthy weight. Regardless of how you choose to go, whether or not you're just going to go on a diet, whether or not you're going to try to exercise more, whether or not you have surgery, then we've got to all have the same habits, okay? Sometimes weight loss surgery is deemed the easy way out. I'm here to tell you that there is nothing easy about going under major abdominal surgery. And you have to get up every day and say, I'm going to eat right, I'm going to exercise, I'm going to take care of myself. So there's an old saying that says, losing weight is hard, being overweight is hard, losing weight is hard, and maintaining weight is hard. Regardless of how you look at it, you have to have the lifestyle factors in place in order to achieve a healthy weight. All right, so why do you think habits are more effective? They're permanent. You do it without thinking, so therefore there's no willpower involved. If you get into a habit of doing something, then it just becomes a routine. It just becomes part of what you do, and you don't have to actively think about it, actively write it on your calendar, actively do something to remind yourself to do that. Why else do you think habits might be effective? It becomes a way of life. It's ongoing. It's just the way it is, okay? So the first habit that I said is to eat real food. Now this should be a no-brainer, but in our day and age, if you go into a grocery store, there's probably more non-real food than there is real food. So what would be your definition of real food? Plants. I'm sorry, what else? Fruits. Unprocessed. What else? Something you actually have to cook, okay, and that's coming up. Okay, usually real food doesn't have a label on it. You know, meat is obviously, well, got the saran wrap on it, but there's usually not a list of ingredients because it's meat, okay? I like to say you need to either eat plants, you need to eat things that eat plants, and you need to avoid things that are processed in a plant, all right? So we're focusing on lean meats, low-fat dairy, fruits and vegetables, whole grains, all right? Eat real food is your first habit. The second one is to cook, all right? A lot of times we eat out. What's the problem with eating out the majority of your meals? A lot of salt, a lot of sugar. You don't know what's in it. What else? That's right. The portions are large, a lot of calories. Sometimes you can get almost your whole day's calories in one particular meal, okay? If you're cooking, what is the advantage? Do what? What's the advantage of cooking? You know what's in it. Now, what's the disadvantage of cooking? You got to do it, you know? You got to cook, you know? It's just more work, all right? So what are some things that would make it easier for you to get a meal on the table every night without stopping at a drive-thru or ordering out? Pre-planning, definitely. You got to go to the grocery store. You got to kind of plan what you're going to have. You got to have it in the refrigerator ready to cook. What else? How can you make it easier to get a dinner on the table every night? Crock pot is definitely a good one. Crock pot is excellent. Pressure cooker would work the same way if you could go home, and then a lot of times the pressure cooker will greatly reduce the amount of time. Exactly. Cook a bigger meal on the weekend so you got leftovers during the rest of the week. Exactly. What else? I heard something over here. I think you've got to get into a routine where you can either just have a lot of 30-minute meals, which means like you can throw some meat on the grill, you throw some meat in the oven, steam some vegetables, you know, use your microwave, use your prepackaged products like salad and greens that are already washed and chopped up for you. Or, like you said, go ahead and just do a big cook-up. On the weekends, cook a lot of stuff, put it all in the little individual containers in the refrigerator, and as you're needing stuff for dinner or needing stuff for your lunches, you pull it out and go. Cooking is a habit that has a lot of benefits, yet it's at the same time, if you're not prepared, if you haven't kind of planned what you're going to do, it can be a struggle to actually get it to pull it off every night. When you get home from work at 5, everybody's screaming that they're hungry, and you got to be somewhere else by 6:30. So it requires some planning, it requires some preparation, and yet it can really pay off health-wise. Okay, avoid junk food. This should be a no-brainer, but it's out there. And what's the advantage of junk food? It tastes good, that's right. And it's designed to taste good. And it's designed to make you want to go back for more, okay? So, how do you avoid it? Don't buy it, that's right. If you have to decide every single time you open the pantry, am I going to eat the potato chips? Am I going to eat the crackers? Am I going to eat this? You have to make that decision multiple times a day. If you make the decision at the grocery store to leave it there, it's not going to be a problem, you know. Ice cream's the same way. If you can hear that ice cream calling your name, you know, every night, you know, odds are if you're already in your pajamas, you're not going to get dressed and go to Publix and get another gallon, you know. And yet, you will, okay. And yet, if you're in your pajamas, you'll definitely go to the freezer to get some. So whatever your trigger foods are, you've got to make sure that you are setting up your environment to make it as difficult as possible, because the junk food is literally everywhere. And it calls your name, and we have used it as stress management. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. And so we like our sugars, we like our salty. Okay, the next one is drink water. Again, this should be a no-brainer, but what is the main beverages that we consume? Sodas, sweet tea, sugar, 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 okay? So how can you get more water in? The bottled water? Or what did you say? Okay, buy it at the store. Okay, so if you want to do bottled water, then just make sure you've got some in the refrigerator ready to roll. What else? Flavored, okay. And how do you flavor it? Lemon, mint, yeah. I know we were out of town not too long ago, and we were in the hotel. You know how they've got those nice little water pitchers set up with the little spouts. It had all this ice in it, and it had strawberries in it. I had never seen the strawberries floating around. It was like just crazy good. And it's like just some strawberries and ice and water. And yet you think you're getting a really nice drink. Water is your best beverage. Work to get it in, okay? Generally, most people are not getting in enough water and getting in way too much soda. All right, move. What's the problem with exercise? Do what? It takes effort. It takes time. I think that's what I heard over here. What else? Why do we not exercise? Yes, ma'am. You're tired at the end of your workday. Exactly right. Okay, we're going to get to that, another habit to kind of address that in just a minute. But yeah, you've got to be intentional about your movement. Now, when I say movement, you don't have to just go run on a treadmill for hours on end. I particularly like my Fitbit because it gives me credit for when I am walking around just as part of my daily activity. And then at the end of the day, I know how much I got to do to finish up and get my 10,000 steps. If you get some sort of pedometer or a tracker, you know, start where you're at. If you notice that you're getting 2,000 steps, shoot for 3,000 steps. Don't try to go to 10,000 all the next week. Once 30,000 is in good shape, then go for 4,000 and keep working your way up. Find an activity you enjoy. Find a partner to have some accountability. You know, if you have a standing tennis date every Saturday morning, then you're going to be more likely to do that than if you've set the alarm for 5 o'clock and yet there's no accountability to get out of bed and get something done. But we've got to have movement in order to not only to burn calories, but just to improve our cardiovascular status, improve our muscular status, as well as improving our flexibility. Okay, controlling the portion sizes. Why would that be important? Yes, ma'am. Okay, all right, that's right. The more you eat, you know, then you just get used to larger and larger and larger portions. You don't ever really get full. What else? Why are portion sizes important? Calorie intake, yeah. You can be eating the right foods. Maybe you're avoiding the junk food. Maybe you're eating healthy foods. Nuts come to mind. Nuts are a healthy fat, except if you're eating the nuts, handful after handful after handful after handful, you've consumed a lot of calories. So it's healthy, but it's too much of a good thing, all right? So portions matter. So if you're choosing to, you know, make good food choices, you're exercising, you're not sure exactly why you're not losing weight, track your portions, track your calories in one of the online calorie trackers, and kind of see if, even though everything you're eating is healthy, if you're eating too much of it, you're still not going to see the weight loss that you want to see. Or you may realize that, oh, I thought I was only eating a fourth of a cup, and you may find that you're actually eating 3/4 of a cup. So sometimes our eyeballs are not really that great about judging how much is on our plate. But when you get the actual measuring cups out and the actual spoons out and the actual scales out, you'll really see what 3 ounces of meat look like. You'll see what a cup of mashed potatoes looks like. You'll see what a tablespoon of mayonnaise looks like. And you think, yo, I'm probably putting 2 or 3 tablespoons on my sandwich instead of the 1 that I'm thinking that I'm doing. All right, sleep. Why do you think sleep's important? That's usually one that's not necessarily in a dietary program. That's right. That's where your body repairs, rejuvenates, takes care of stuff. What else? Exactly. Well, if you're asleep, you can't eat. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah, sometimes, you know, when you're headed to the kitchen for a midnight snack, maybe you just need to go to bed, you know. What else? Stress relief. Why else can lack of sleep cause us to get in trouble? Sure, yeah. And in basic terms, you're eating to stay awake. You know, when you have to, like, you know, stay up all night studying for a final, you know, pizza is usually involved, Mountain Dew is usually involved, things of that nature that you just are eating to stay awake. And for any of you that may work night shift, sometimes that can be a problem because night shift, there's just food and you're eating in order to stay awake. You're kind of going against what the normal sleep pattern would be. So not only are you not giving, by not getting enough sleep, you're not giving your body the time to rejuvenate, get your hormone levels kind of back in check, but a lot of times we're overeating, drinking coffee, drinking Cokes to stay awake so that we can get done whatever it is that we need to get done. So getting your 7-8 hours of sleep every night is also one of a good healthy habit. All right, manage stress. There's a story about a lady that was babysitting, and the little boy fell down and busted his knee, and he's crying and all. And so, you know, she gets him up and she puts him on the counter, and she gives him a cookie, and she says, okay, you just sit right here, and I'll be back. I'm going to get the Band-Aids. So she comes back, and the boy is sitting there with the cookie on his knee. That child has not learned that cookies make us feel better. He didn't know that cookies are what we get when we've had a bad day, that when we've had some sort of an accident. We've learned early in life to use food as rewards. And so regardless if we're stressed, or if we're happy, or if we're sad, or if we're in any kind of social environment, what is always involved? Food, all right? One of the things that we have to learn to do is to use food to satisfy our physical hunger and use other stress management techniques to take care of our emotional needs. Sometimes that means if we've had a bad day, instead of going out to eat and eating a large meal to make us feel better, we need to go take a walk. We need to maybe have some sort of a yoga session or some other things to help with stress management. But one of the things before we start eating, we need to kind of identify, why am I eating? How hungry am I? Am I physically hungry, or am I just emotionally hungry? One of the ways, we always think we're hungry, but one of the ways you can kind of gauge that is, would chicken and broccoli satisfy this hunger? If you are truly hungry, chicken and broccoli will work. If you're emotionally hungry, chicken and broccoli don't get it. You want ice cream, you want something salty, sweet, creamy, whatever. Everybody's got our own things. So think about, am I physically hungry? Am I emotionally hungry? Physical hunger requires food. Emotional hunger requires other stress management or emotional techniques. All right, and then I've got this one, know yourself. What do you think that might mean and how that works into habits? Know yourself. Okay, don't do things that you know you're not going to be able to maintain. Exactly. Gretchen Rubin in her blog, and I think she's got a habits book out, she talks about the abstainers and the moderators. The abstainers do better to leave something off altogether, because one little bite can trigger the whole bag, okay? Think about if you've got a bag of Hershey Kisses in your drawer, or if you've got a bag of potato chips. Can you eat one kiss and leave the rest of them in the drawer for tomorrow? Or does it keep calling your name until every piece is gone? Same thing's true if you're the salty type. Can you just have a handful of chips with your sandwich? Or do you keep working until the whole 2-pound bag is gone? Know yourself. Are you abstainer or are you a moderator? Do you feel restricted? If you just can have a little bite, then you may be more a moderator. And so it might be better for you just to have a small portion. You eat it, you get it out of your system, it's good. But if you keep going back, sometimes, and generally it's not going to be everything. Generally we're going to be either salty or we're going to be sweet, and those are going to be our trigger foods. So know your triggers, know what it is that you need to do in order to leave it at the store, leave it off altogether. Know that it can't be part of your life if that's going to just trigger you to keep overeating. Same thing's true with exercise. She knows she's going to be tired every afternoon after work. So what does she not need to do? Don't even plan to exercise then. Work out another time where you can get it worked in. Because if you know that you've got to do something and that you're going to be too tired, if you can't rearrange it so that you've got more energy in the afternoon, then that just is not going to be a good time for you. That's not your peak energy levels to do that. By the same token, if you work 3 to 11, 5 a.m. is not a good time to plan to go to the gym. It's probably not going to happen after about 4 hours of sleep. So know yourself, know your tendencies, and work with them rather than trying to incorporate something that's just not going to work. And then you feel like a failure because it's not going to work. Really think about, how can I incorporate this so that I get a win-win instead of just setting myself up for failure. And then the last one is find the balance. The thing about habits is that they're going to keep going, all right? But there's going to be things that throw us off track, all right? My father-in-law recently passed away in Texas. So we had about a week in Texas. No exercise got done that week. My eating was totally off that week. But you know what? I came back home. And when you get back home, it's just time to get back into the habits. And that's the good thing about habits, is that there will be bumps in the road. There are people that are going to be in the hospital that you have to just sit up there 24/7 taking care of them. There's going to be things that occur that you're going to have business trips where it's going to be difficult to manage. Various things come up. But instead of throwing the whole thing out, do the best that you can for the short period of time that's kind of a life interruption, then you just get back into the habit. Over the course of your entire life for the next 60 or 80 years, it's going to be what happens most of the time rather than what happens those few blips here and there. Our tendency is we get off track and we just keep going instead of turning around and getting it back in track. Does that make sense? All right, Aristotle says, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. The more habits we can put in place, the more it changes our overall lifestyle and really gets us where we want to be. Thank you very much for your attention. Are there any questions?